Mini episode 1329 is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.com.
The FDH Lounge. You'll want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to FDH Lounge Mini episode 1329. This is FDH Managing Partner Rick Morris here. And I have joining me here today one of our FDH Lounge dignitaries and one of my oldest friends going way, way back. We've had this gentleman on previously for a number of different things. You've heard him on a number of Pantheon roundtables and things Pantheon adjacent, like our last two anniversary show roundtables that we've done. Also, fantasy golf, fantasy tennis, when we've explored this previously on the show with the niche sports. We've never done a segment with him just around football, which is way overdue because he's one of the biggest football guys I know. I have been playing fantasy football with this guy beyond probably the lifetime of many of our listeners out there. So one of my very good friends, we've been competing against one another with very colorful team names over the years. There will be many colorful team names to come in the years to come, but today he's here to help me break down Super Bowl 55. All of that could only sum up my close personal friend, John Adams. Johnny, welcome to the show, my man.
Rick, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and always enjoy doing battle, my friend.
Yes.
No matter what it is, fantasy, baseball, football, that matter, the tennis, always a pleasure. So.
Oh yeah, it's good to have you, and I'm sure we'll break into the patented smarm that is a part of our dynamic here at various points along the way. Which, we might as well just get this out of the way at the start here, going into this thing here. So each of us, whether it be because of fantasy football or in my case with Tom Brady, just flat out chowd hating. I didn't want to see Tom Brady get over. You didn't want to see Andy Reid get over. One of us was guaranteed to come out of this thing sad. I really didn't think it'd be me. Man, I was off on this game. But, Johnny, congratulations. You were the one, at least from the point of view of personal spite, who ends up getting over in our little battle here.
Yes, definitely. Did not see this outcome, though. Was kind of pulling for Tom. But did not see this outcome at all. So, kind of caught me off guard.
There's so much to get into with that. There really is. And this is a thing where, and I had said to you off air previously that there are games out there I've always held up as the ultimate sort of 1 in 100 game. That if you played it 100 times, it'd go that way exactly once. I'd always thought of the Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl as being that way. Uh-huh. And then I think we saw it again, as much as we might not want to admit it, with that Browns-Steelers playoff game. I think to imagine the Browns going in and winning is not out of the question, to be sure. But the way that it went, 28-0 in the first quarter, you get that maybe 1 out of 100 times. This is one here where you're tempted to say this might have been a 1 in 100 outcome stylistically the way that it went, but based on this crappy offensive line, that was the case there. As Tampa Bay, for the second game in a row, manages to avoid playing the franchise left tackle of their opponent after it happened to Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. For those that don't think Tom Brady's lucky, just take a look at those little factoids there. I'm not going to say 1 time out of 100, but something this much of a beatdown, maybe 5 times out of 100. I mean, how would you see it as far as this went? I mean, we know that this outcome was an anomaly, but probably not the pure anomaly of the other two examples, but neither would it be something where 50 times out of 100 it would have been this bad.
Correct. I just didn't see this outcome. I actually picked the Bucks just because they were trending. I had them 31-27 winning. Mm-hmm. Did not see a blowout. And frankly, I don't think anybody saw. If I'll tell you, the 1 in 100 would be the Kansas City Chiefs not scoring a touchdown. That was, by all means, that was a shocker. look, I think it was a confluence of several things happening, unfortunately, for the Chiefs. But to your point with the left tackle, I saw Tampa Bay. I figured they'd get over on Washington. They started to look good against the Saints. I thought the Saints were kind of on their last leg with Breeze here.
Well, couple gift interceptions, Johnny. Couple of gifts from Drew Brees that put him into the next round. A little lucky again.
I agree. But when they kind of got over on Green Bay, I kind of saw them playing some of their best football at the right time. Now, and speaking of poor performances, I would have probably had a conversation with Mike Patton at halftime and had someone else running the defense in the second half, unfortunately. But anyway, did not see this outcome in this game. Again, can't believe that the Kansas City Chiefs didn't score a touchdown. Would have never saw that coming.
You're right. That's the 1 out of 100. I will say, too, as far as the NFC Championship game goes, I really think that the horse was out of the barn door by halftime, because if you look at the second half, and again, Green Bay, they should have gone for the touchdown, obviously. Even on 4th and 9, it wasn't looking good there. But the same thing with the Browns previously against Kansas City. Ironically, I think it was 4th and 9. I would have gone for it at that point, because to punt was to surrender. Just like in that situation, to go for the field goal was to surrender. But aside from that, Johnny, Green Bay just ran out of time. That's what it was. If that game goes 65 minutes, 70 minutes, the trajectory of that second half, Tampa Bay was hanging on by their teeth, and they managed to. The damage had already been done in the first half, and there'd been enough damage that Green Bay couldn't claw all the way back. But it's a thing where they did make some adjustments, and they did kind of get in there, and I thought showed a little bit of a blueprint as far as how to handle Tampa Bay. One that Steve Spagnuolo, who I respect greatly and who has always had success against Tom Brady, obviously did not take advantage of.
I would agree with that. I think they did. That game goes. The NFC title game goes any longer. You're right. But that first half, you're right, got out of hand for him. I think Brady might have been 6 for 6 on third down, including that 35-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
To kind of end the first half. But yeah, they have to be aggressive. I mean, 4th down, they should have known that they had that hole to climb out of. You got to be aggressive. 4th and 9, you got to go for it. And then also in the Browns Kansas City game, I did believe when they got the ball back with the 5 minutes, I think it was 5:17. I thought that was their last best chance to score. And I was 4th and 9 was tough. Getting to 4th and 9, I actually could see punting at that point. I would have never been. You can't get to 4th and 9. I believe first down of that drive was a loss run by Nick Chubb for a 1-yard loss.
Right.
Then you've got like an incompletion. Getting to 4th and 9, you've got to get to 4th and 5 or less.
Yes,
and
I agree.
There, but 4th and 9, it was tough because if they get with Kansas City knocking on the door, if they would have been stopped there, it would have been game over. But I still think you definitely could make the argument for going for it. I don't know if I would have, but.
Well, yeah, and in both instances, the teams ended up paying for not doing so. And this is a circumstance where on the Super Bowl preview that we did with good friend Vernon Turner, I got to give him all the credit in the world, and we were going to possibly effort to try and get him back after the Super Bowl to talk about this, and unfortunately it didn't work out. I would have liked to have put him over personally. Hopefully he's catching this after the fact where I am. He mentioned Todd Bowles as somebody that could be an impact person in this Super Bowl, and that what he was going to have dialed up for Kansas City, he really had a feeling was going to be something impactful. And again, most times in football, the way it works, if you can make the 4-man rush work to where you're not having to blitz to get that kind of pressure on the quarterback, you are going to have a lot of effectiveness. I actually noted in the Super Bowl preview, the same one where I said that I thought that Kansas City was going to win 34-27. So I said, look, there's a possibility that they can make Kansas City pay the way Green Bay did. I did not, in my own defense, know that Green Bay was going to be doing a shuffle where they were going to have like 3 guys out of position, I think. Like they moved somebody else into Fisher's spot, and then it became whack-a-mole as far as where they were putting bodies. I would have just put somebody in there at left tackle and taken the L, if that guy had just, been getting beaten a lot. Maybe you put in an extra tight end for blocking purposes. Granted, you got to change up your playbook to do that, but, have one spot be a weakness if a weakness cannot be avoided. Don't let it be 3 spots. And it was at least 3 spots there. And ironically, and I've said this off air, I think for Mahomes, when he goes to the Hall of Fame, when he retires, when he's done, this game may actually be on his highlight reel. They will show some of the ones like how close he came to making a miracle completion in a couple of those instances. And the one time I think Tyreek Hill should have had it. It bounced off his helmet. I mean, if ever anybody looked heroic in defeat, it was Patrick Mahomes, because yes, they didn't score any touchdowns for, I believe, the first time in his tenure. It's the worst it's ever looked in the 3 years with him at the helm. But man, oh man, for somebody running for his life and refusing to quit and almost against all odds completing a couple of those ones, I don't know that I've ever seen anything quite like that.
Boy, a lot to chew there, and I'm going to echo some of those sentiments. And first and foremost, I do believe Todd Bowles deserves a lot of credit, and props to Mr. Vernon for nailing that one.
Yep.
Because, and I hope, and I know there was a confluence of things going on for the Chiefs, but I hope it does not detract from the Todd Bowles game plan, because I think he deserves a lot of credit. Now, in terms of the offensive line, I'm with you, and we've had this conversation off air, where I would think, instead of shuffling 3 positions, guys out of position, I think you're better off going with the understudy that has experience specifically at that position, and then supplement with chipping, getting some extra blocking. I think they would have made way more successful.
Yep.
And again, I think there was there was a confluence of things going on for the Chiefs. The offensive line issue. I just think there were some guys at key positions that didn't play really good games. There may have been some distractions with some of the family stuff going on.
Yeah.
But 2 things. One, people needed to, and I hope Tampa looked faster. They looked like they wanted it more. They had the Todd Bowles dialing that up. So, I hope people don't detract from really the good game that Tampa played. And that being said, I'm with you with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I don't know how he was drawing criticism. He was drawing some criticism for this game for the way he played. He doesn't play that game, I'm not sure they score at all.
Right.
I mean, and for him to even break free to get throws off, I mean, that says it all for his, in terms of career, his want to win, his want to play and do it for teammates. And the way he was just, I mean, the one diving, the guy's diving to his right and still can get it 30 yards down the field.
Yeah.
I mean, so crazy.
That's an excellent point. And I tell you what, too, I mean, 52.3% completions. I mean, that's a low basement for him, if ever there was one. And yet, you look at the circumstances, 26 of 49, 270, with no line to speak of. Probably the least amount of support I've ever seen a quarterback get in a big game. That in and of itself basically is a miracle. I always like to look at the stat sheet here and see if there's anything that jumps out at me. And there wasn't anything, by and large, that was super surprising as far as the 2 different teams went. I will tell you, I teased this off air. There's a player who had a stat line that is far more respectable than what his effort was on the night. And it's unbelievable that there was only 3 incompletions to this guy, because it seemed like there was a lot more. 7 of 10 completed passes, 73 yards to Tyreek Hill. Now, that's not a great stat line for him, 7 for 73. It's way below his yards per catch. But Tyreek Hill basically played like ass. I'm sorry. That is about as bad as he's ever going to look in a big game. 7 for 73. Johnny, I say lies, damn lies, and statistics.
He was a non-factor.
Yep.
I mean, he was a non-factor.
Yep.
And after hearing some of the post-game comments from Mahomes, where they took away deep and they took away the sides of the field.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where he kind of lives in a way. And they did a really remarkable job of keeping Tyreek Hill, the Tampa defense, keeping him in front of them and making plays. He did not. I mean, he probably got a few yards after the catch, right? That's where he got his 73 from, mostly, obviously.
One was a 23-yarder. One was that. So the other ones were basically what? So that's my rudimentary grasp of math tells me he was 6 for 50 aside from that, not even 10.
Very pedestrian.
Yes.
I mean, 6. That's very pedestrian for a guy that potentially, and I think it was their earlier matchup. Didn't he go over 200?
I believe so. Yeah.
Early in the season. Yeah. Well, they were clearly motivated, Tampa's defense, and they clearly had a good game plan. And I like the makeup of their defense. They're strong up front. They've got some speed at the back end.
Yep.
And then they've got some playmakers at linebacker. I think that's a really steady blueprint.
It really is. I mean, it's a strong defense. They proved it. I mean, it's not on the level of their 0-2 champions, but few defenses are. It's a very, very excellent defense when you're looking at the all-time Super Bowl winners, to be sure. And in looking at this, an excellent effort by a number of other players here. Of course, we know Travis Kelce, 10 for 133. He was the one guy that they really couldn't stop with Tampa Bay. He had a lot of big moments there. And I will say, too, that whether it be for fantasy disappointment purposes or whatever, there's just certain guys that you might love to hate, I might love to hate. This is a thing where I told you after the game you'd be surprised to know the stat thing here. And I don't feel like this is lies, damn lies, and statistics, because I was impressed in real time watching him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 9 carries, 64 yards. Part of it was I think Tampa Bay was a little bit more willing to give up the run strategically, so there was that. But the guy made some plays. He was one of the few guys that was impactful, I felt like, for Kansas City.
I thought he had a good season, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he started off strong.
Yeah.
I think they were kind of trying to experiment with the Le'Veon Bell thing. I think that's clear that is not going to be a way forward.
Yeah.
But I would say, yeah, he had a good game. I would agree with the suggestion that they kind of gave up some yards to kind of. They clearly were guarding against the big plays.
Yes.
And they were allowing the middle of the field, which
yes.
honestly, and I still think he played a great game, but it probably was why Kelce maybe drew a few more yards than possibly normal, because they were giving those plays up to avoid the big play. But yeah, I thought he had a good game. He had a good game. And when you think about rookies that usually, coming out of college that might drop off after 10, 12 games because they're not used to the length of the season, he played pretty well.
Well, yeah, and that's where, I mean, Kelce, for a man of his size, speed, and hands, that triumvirate that is so rare in this league. I go back to the Browns-Chiefs playoff game, and my old friend, so this will be a shout-out if he's listening, my old friend from the Sports Talk Network, Don Peterson, he was commenting on Facebook, and I guess he was just venting, like, why don't we have anybody on Kelce? And I replied, I said, Don, who do we have that we're going to put on Kelce? And he was just like, I know. So it's hard to know with Kansas City, how much of that was, if anything, was being granted to him by the way that Tampa Bay was playing, or whether or not they actually had anybody that could have limited him more. And the truth is probably somewhere in between. As far as it goes with receivers running around and everything, I will tell you this, that upon hearing the news the other day that the NBA had issued a warning, I believe, to Kyle Kuzma and LeBron James about flopping, I'm thinking to myself, well, some of these sports leagues run differently than other sports leagues, because if ever you were going to be calling that, it would have been in the Super Bowl. And nevertheless, the yellow flags, they were a-flying, and a good bitterman like myself is going to credit that for so many of the Tampa Bay drives in the first half here. Again, I thought it was even worse than the Steelers-Seahawks Super Bowl, which had been my previous...
Wow.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. I'll say that worse than Super Bowl XL in my estimation, 15 years later. So that was how I saw it. But, Johnny, I realize that's one of those your mileage may vary type takes.
Yeah, I think you're a little bit of a revisionism there. I have to stay with the Seattle-Pittsburgh, the worst called Super Bowl.
Okay.
I could see where a few of these calls maybe, but Breland struggled with interference calls most of the season.
Yes.
I contend that Matthew, a great player, but draws a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And at times it catches up to him. So ultimately, you hate to see a game decided by flags. I don't know. I'm watching them. Some of the one call of the end zone on Matthew could have been a little ticky-tacky. I thought the other ones were legitimate.
Didn't the ball hit the upright or something? Come on.
But no. You never want to see the game. The worst call ever was certainly the non-call in the Rams in the title NFC title game several years ago in the Rams Saints. But yeah, I mean, look, I know the people are thinking, well, there's another occasion where Tom Brady gets over, but I don't know. I thought the game was called pretty well, but of course, I kind of like Tom, so. Sure. Maybe I'm a little biased.
Well, two things from a not exactly on the field thing here to bring to your attention here as we're bringing it around. The first would be, you mentioned the Rams, and of course that Super Bowl that they had against the Patriots subsequently. Two marks a trend in my estimation. It is not too early to pronounce the CBS jinx. The last two Super Bowls they've had have been rancid and unwatchable. The Rams-Patriots game, which stands as the singular example of all time, that a game can be close and still boring as hell, because that game was pretty close going into the fourth quarter, and it sucked. I remember how hard we were all trying to stay awake at the Super Bowl party that year, which, again, shout out to our good friend Bob Bennick, who in most years going back to the 90s, would be hosting us at his parties over at his place, but you and I did not get to hang over there this year. A wise decision made by the Bennick household because of the pandemic. So shout out to our good friend and our competitor in the FDH Experts Golf League that we have going this year. But that Super Bowl, I mean, I don't know what it is with CBS, but they were so happy about signing up Tony Romo to be their color commentator, and they are 0 for 2 on watchable Super Bowl since he got there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we all expected. Certainly that game was. I thought we were robbed of a great Super Bowl because I assumed it would be Brady versus Breeze, and I thought that would have been a great Super Bowl. And I think the game plan would have changed. I think it would have been a shootout and a lot of fun.
I think so.
But they are over 2 because this game, unfortunately, it just took a turn. And I will say this. Mm-hmm. I think everybody that was watching thought, when's the comeback coming? When is the comeback coming? Yes. I certainly thought it's going to be coming. And it just never surfaced.
Well, that's an excellent point, and leads me into my final point here, which is where, as much as I put over Vernon for his very prescient call about Todd Bowles being a hero in this Super Bowl, he and I both biffed it on this one, and I still don't completely understand why. On the talk of the ratings going in, we both thought this was going to be a very highly rated Super Bowl. For all the factors everybody was pointing to, I know that sports numbers have been down during the pandemic, and fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Ben Chu seems to think that the exponential growth of streaming and that people just now, like, it doesn't even matter if there's competition on TV, that people are so used to streaming that they may just go look for something else there. That must be it, because again, it was a bad game, and I know a lot of the casuals who just, it's funny. The less you knew about football, the more, not to be bitter, but the more you thought Tom Brady was going to win this game, because doesn't Tom Brady always win the Super Bowls? Actually, no, he's lost 3 of them. Hate to tell you casuals, but he doesn't win every time he's in the Super Bowl. But so the casuals, when Tampa Bay pulled away, were probably like, okay, that's what I thought. So there's probably a decent amount of this to where, the game was bad and they paid a price on it. But there's a thing also, too, where even if it had been a close, competitive Super Bowl, Johnny, that number wouldn't have been nearly what I thought it would have been, and I can't understand why. You had less Super Bowl parties. It should have been more individual TVs on. A bad Super Bowl doesn't fully explain the numbers, so I just don't get it.
Yeah, once again, a confluence of different things, I believe. I think your casual fans may have tuned out. I think the people that look for, watch the Super Bowl specifically for the commercials. Mm-hmm. A lot of those commercials are now, you can catch them in other places.
Yes.
Either concurrently or you could, catch them ahead of time. I would have thought with less parties, more people would have tuned in.
Yes.
But I think it's really a social, I think it's telling. I think it's a really social gathering, kind of summed obviously the end of the football season. So maybe that. I hate to think, although I think there's an undercurrent of this too. I know we're finding a lot of cross-programming in terms of advertising when some of these events come up. I think, there certainly is the presence of, I don't want to say politicizing, but there's definitely, you've got the thoughts about things going on with the anthem and,
Yep.
Certainly events in our country. Current events are affecting some of the ways people are handling the anthem and those things.
Yep.
So that could be keeping people away. But I think it was, once again, I would attribute it to kind of a confluence of things. It's a very social gathering, and people just are not gathering. So especially if your team, I would like to see the numbers, obviously, for the cities that had teams in it. I'm sure the numbers were up, but for the casual fans, maybe that's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, the fact that it was around 96 million, it didn't even crack 100. I'm just really, really struggling to understand that, because a bad game only explains so much. If it's 96 million, that means you had a whole bunch of people that I thought were going to want to watch the game that never even tuned in the first place, notwithstanding it being Brady and Mahomes and everything else like that. So of all the things that I didn't see, that was one of them. And I guess another factor as well, if I'm talking about the outcome, is I really did underestimate the whole thing of Tampa Bay sleeping in their own beds the whole time versus Kansas City flying in the day before the game. Like you said, the thing with one of Andy Reid's sons, who probably already should have been in jail based on his previous conduct, but unfortunately harming these innocent young kids here. And the last I heard, it wasn't a good medical outlook for at least one of them. So that's a horrible shame and a tragedy. And it is the kind of thing that's going to be a little bit of a hangover on a team as well. It might sound like it's, trivializing to talk about the outcome, the effect on a game, but these things happen. One does affect the other, and Kansas City probably was, not completely there because, the players were upset about what had happened, and there's just any number of factors that made this thing so much less than we thought it was going to be all the way around. But the one thing that is always every bit as much as I'm expecting every time around, Johnny, is whenever you and I get together to record anything. So the chance to do so for Super Bowl 55, we hadn't done anything like this before. I knew I wanted to rectify this and get you into the rotation for stuff like this. Really, really appreciate it, my man. Thanks so much for making time.
Thanks so much, and always enjoy catching up, Rick. So we'll do it again soon.
Appreciate it, my friend. All right, thank you, Johnny. The great John Adams, my good friend, longtime FDH Lounge dignitary. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to FDH Lounge, mini episode 1329.